My name is Ryan Knight, and I do want to thank those that are joining that were part of our grant writing, the grant writing challenge. So we spent a week just going through what does a grant writing blueprint look like. And so if you do need support with the actual grant writing, please touch base because we do have those supports available. But as I mentioned during that challenge about the investment readiness program, so I wanted to take a day and go deeper into this grant specifically. So if this is your first time joining, you really haven't missed anything about the investment readiness program. For those previous sessions, we can talk more about getting you those recordings. But the investment, oh, I'm sorry. For those that don't know who I am, my name is Ryan Knight. I do consider myself a serial entrepreneur. I run a social enterprise called Detailing Nights and Service Kingdom. I'm also part of the Executives Power Up and secretly, quietly working on the Black Panthers cage. But all that to say, was one of the co-founders of the Afro-Caribbean Business Network, and we really exist to make sure that entrepreneurs in our community win. And by win, it's not just being a sustainable business that stays at that level, but able to grow and exponentially grow. I do always want to take time to shout out our partners, especially those that are hosting the call, Empowered for X. So thanks to the team that's behind the scenes. Other partners such as Alterna Savings, Edge, that's part of Sheridan College, their entrepreneurship discovery and growth engine, Dream Legacy Foundation that supports entrepreneurs, Black tech entrepreneurs. So Dream Legacy is connected with Ryerson DMZ. And if you are in tech, definitely make sure and touch base with them. They have the Black Innovation Fund, the Black Innovation Program, so they can walk you through that entire journey. Calabash, that is a cooperative of expert service providers in our community. So if you're looking for consultants that can work on different areas of your business or of your nonprofit, definitely plug into Calabash. I believe the website is calabash.global. So check out the list of expert service providers that you can actually spend this grant money that we are going to help you get with consultants in the community. SETC, which stands for the Social Economy Through Social Inclusion, really connecting us and being a bridge from the Social Finance Fund and different funding that the federal government is putting out and all levels of government, and making sure that the community, which is us, knows about this funding and we can tap in, which is a big reason, and I would say the main reason that we're actually here learning about the investment readiness program, because we're aware and now we're in position to make as many entrepreneurs and nonprofit organizations aware of it. ZSC, which is one of our business advisor supports. So when you fill out our business needs assessment, you get a phone call either from myself or one of our business advisors. ZSC supports us with that. One Full Circle, which I consider we're like One Full Circle Ontario. They're based in Montreal. We do similar work. And so big shout out to Pharaoh and his team there. And of course, the Toronto Community Benefits Network. Shout out to Rosemary Powell and her team. They've been supporters from day one, I would say. Some people just need to in. It's all right. Yes, they've been supporters from day one. Even before my ACBN days, they always showed support with Detailing Nights. And as we're growing, they've still been there to support us going forward. So a little bit about the Afro-Caribbean Business Network. We started 5 years ago, so stay tuned. You're probably going to get an invite to our 5-year anniversary that's happening in December. But when it started, I was an entrepreneur running Detailing Nights, and we were ready to grow and scale the company, expand via franchises across Canada into the US. And we realized that there were no Black-focused business organizations that had it in their mandate to scale up companies. So we brought 6 other entrepreneurs together, said, could we create an entity that would sit down with an entrepreneur, figure out what stage their business is in, and then create a strategy for them to grow their companies and scale it exponentially. Thus, ACBN was born. Initially, it started with more info sessions and networking events. We started to realize that a lot of the entrepreneurs that were in our info sessions weren't at a certain baseline to be able to take advantage of the different opportunities that were available. A lot of times, hey, sometimes you have to have payroll for these grants, or your finances and your taxes done, or be an incorporation. So foundational things. So we felt we could shift to capacity building to help entrepreneurs actually get those foundational items done, and then they'd be in position to take advantage of these opportunities. So for example, we were able to start our own microloan program. We were able to start a marketing and sales support, and also being, oh, yeah, okay, switch anyway. Being able to support those with investment readiness. So being able to now plug in and go through our cohort so that you can get that first tranche of investment money. Typically, we missed the friends and family round, so we're looking to get entrepreneurs ready to get an injection of capital between that $50,000 to $250,000 range. Over the last 4 years, we've seen our database of entrepreneurs grow to over 5,000. We're seeing about 74% of them are female entrepreneurs. And in the database, about 91% are the business founders and CEOs. But what I'm most proud of is our ability to create partnerships and relationships with other Black-focused business organizations. And you'll notice when we started about 5 years ago, there were very few, and now we've been able to grow this ecosystem that extends our reach to over 20,000 Black entrepreneurs in Canada, and also extending our reach into Africa and also the Caribbean. A few of the pillars that I feel ACBN stands on, of course, entrepreneurship. I do feel that everybody should start an entrepreneurial activity of some sort. Of course, I implore the youth because they are still living at home, have the bandwidth to try new entrepreneurship. I'll call them experiments. And if it fails, you still have somewhere to live. But even if you're working full time and can have an entrepreneurship concept or hustle on the side to increase the bottom line, and you can also take advantage of different tax benefits. But that's a whole different, I'll say a whole different webinar we'll get into another day. But like I said, entrepreneurship for me is the great equalizer. So economic inclusion, I feel, does start with the ability to own your own enterprise and use entrepreneurship to really build, because the barrier to entry is low, but the potential for growth is unlimited. And it takes convening like this. We were doing in-person networking, we do conferences, but even being virtual and being able to share knowledge on a medium like Zoom or any of these platforms, it helps us share this knowledge and make sure that all of us in the community are aware, and anything that is available, we get access to. And of course, that last pillar, access to funding. So that's why we're all here. And that's really a big piece in all of these research studies. They keep doing reports, they keep doing research about what are the barriers for Black entrepreneurs, and access to funding is always at the top. So time to stop talking about it. Let's actually figure out how to get you capital. I typically like to show this slide just so you can have an idea of the different types of funding that flow at any given time. We've gotten grants from pitch competitions. We've gotten grants from the cities, such as Brampton and Mississauga. We've gotten grants from provincial, the Ontario province, and even grants from the federal, Canadian national grants, and has ranged as low as $500 all the way up to over $1 million. So you really want to be aware of the different ways grants are given, and like I do, just attack it all. Don't feel like you have to pick one or the other. Really use and stack as many different grant opportunities and funding opportunities as possible. Of course, being able to work with an organization like ACBN, we can figure out what type of funds are best to go after. At certain points, a grant is good. At certain points, debt financing is good, like or microloans. At certain point, investment is good. But having organizations like us to talk to and figure out what makes the most sense at a certain time will help you on the journey. But I like our course, our grant course is called Grant Hunter University because I consider myself a grant hunter. And what I get the most joy from is helping to find grants and funding for other organizations and other businesses. So, for example, Rescue Youth International, they work with youth in the community in the education space and navigating the justice system, but they're a nonprofit that didn't have a lot of success with raising grant types funding. So we were able to find the investment readiness program, which is what we're talking about today, to allow them to start a social enterprise and then use that social enterprise to uh, generate profits that would support the nonprofit. Custodia, on the other side of the spectrum, where they're strictly for-profit company, but we were able to coach them in how to structure the company as a social enterprise. Even though they're already doing the work, they didn't realize that they're a social enterprise, so they were able to go for the funding. And New Life Project, big fan of Brenda out in Ottawa. Again, working with us, they didn't have a lot of access to grants or successful grants before, but we were able to plug them into the Supporting Black Communities initiative. So to slow down and pause for a minute, the definition of social enterprise, you will hear um, a lot of varying definitions where what exactly is a social enterprise, and because it ranges, a lot of things fit under a social enterprise. And a big thing that I typically take away is a social enterprise is fighting against some sort of community barrier. So if you're a nonprofit entity, typically you're already fighting against a community barrier, but you're not an income generating activity. So a social enterprise does have to be an enterprise generating income. And on the for-profit side, yes, you're already generating income, but are you really fighting against any community barriers? Do you have positive impact in the community with whether it's what you do with your profits or with your time? What you do in the community is now you operating as a social enterprise. So I typically show this spectrum where on one side is the traditional nonprofit, you are running your operations and you're getting the majority of your funds from donations, grants, and fundraising activities. As you start to shift more into income generating activities, you are now running a social enterprise. From the other side of the spectrum is a traditional nonprofit. We call them the pure capitalists. At all costs, they're trying to make as much money for shareholder value, increasing shareholder value. As it starts to, I would say, come to the middle, where yes, they're practicing social responsibility. Typically, they would have a CSR statement, a corporate social responsibility policy. Then they would shift more into a socially responsible business where a lot of the profits and the activities of the business like directly impact the community. And then they would shift to social enterprise. And I think we have a couple examples. So I'll use Detailing Nights as an example. So we started as a for-profit, generating a car cleaning service. So we go to people's houses, clean their cars, and then we shifted to eco-aware company. So we started using waterless car cleaning products, plant-based cleaning supplies. That's where we started shifting more into a social enterprise. And then we also launched our youth entrepreneurship program. So working with high school and college students, and even those outside of school and those coming out of detention to teach them entrepreneurship and show them that they could actually create their own business rather than always being out there begging for a job. So that's kind of an example from the for-profit lens shifting to a social enterprise in the middle. As I mentioned, Rescue Youth International, their food truck, them being able to partner with GC Jerk Express and go after the investment readiness program to get a grant to then launch their own social enterprise. So they were on that side of the spectrum where they're a pure nonprofit, only generating revenue from grants and donations. Then they were able to create their own income generating activity, which was the food truck, and using that to now take profits and support the nonprofit. So those would be two examples. There's, I would say, wiggle room in the middle. And if you do have questions about if you're currently running a social enterprise, please feel free to book time with me so that we can go deeper into it. Hey, time will be available at the end of this presentation so you can ask as well. But really starting to shift a for-profit company into a social enterprise does take a lot of introspection, because you have to think about what is the positive impact that you want to have in the community, and now how can your business be a driver of that. It typically, you don't want to just slap on the badge of social enterprise onto a business that you're already operating just to qualify for the money. You want to actually be able to ingrain what you're doing into the community, because it becomes more important as you're having these positive impacts in the community. So all that to say, if you do have more questions about what is a social enterprise, for now, please put them into the chat, and then we're gonna come back to it at the end of the presentation. So the three things that we're really gonna cover today is the overview of the Investment Readiness Program, IRP for short. We're gonna walk through an example of a previous IRP application, and I'm going to show you the FAQs for the frequently asked questions for the IRP process, because there is one of the applications that are open right now, but it is focused on the Indigenous community. So you probably, unless you're Indigenous, if you are, the deadline is soon. So, and if you know an Indigenous entrepreneur, please let them know. The National Association of Friendship Centers, they have their application open. So we're gonna look at that so that you can get an idea of what to expect when the Community Foundations of Canada opens their application. Let me through here. All right, so overview of the IRP. So the federal government created the Social Finance Fund, which you'll see here. And that fund is an $800 million pool of funds to support the growth of social enterprises in the community. So they wanted to see more investment and bigger dollar investment into the concept of social enterprise, so that industry, or that sector of the industry, could grow. So seeing more nonprofits starting these income generating activities, and more for-profit companies actually being socially responsible and being corporate social responsibility and more positive social impact, so that that sector of social enterprise would do more positive and would have a bigger positive impact in the community. We wanted to see how to get more dollars into that industry. But what they found is that there weren't a lot of social enterprises that were ready to take on hundreds of thousands, even millions of dollars of investment to scale. So they created the Investment Readiness Program, which started out as a $50 million carve out from the $800 million, to now create a grant program to support social enterprises in fine tuning their operations. And it can be a new startup. So if you have an idea and you want to do the feasibility study or the business plan for it, that's possible. Or if you're already operating, you can now use the money to fine tune, get business development, marketing strategy, financial modeling, cash flow projections, and operations funding to fine tune that to be ready now for the Social Finance Fund. So think of the Investment Readiness Program as that step one to the Social Finance Fund, which is step two. So you're using the grant to fine tune your current operations, and then you'd be able to go after the bigger investment with the Social Finance Fund. And you'll see I'm showing the Community Foundations of Canada. So there's five different intermediaries that are taking the dollars, those $50 million, and being able to disperse it. So the National Association of Friendship Centers, that focused on Indigenous applications. The Canadian Women's Foundation focused on women-led organizations, and they were more focused on charities. There's the Chantier, which is focused on Francophone applications. And now the Community Foundations of Canada, they're, I would say, the broadest stroke of social enterprises. So they focus on for-profit companies as well as nonprofit, and they're able, and that's where, when you apply to the Investment Readiness Program, CFC is most likely where you would fall. If you do fall into the other ones, you should have been on the other calls because we already talked about it. But yes, you might have missed it if you're, let's say, if you're a charity that's a women-focused organization. You actually, I have to check if charities can apply to the CFC, but I'm pretty sure you had to apply through the Canadian Women's Foundation, which already closed. So if you're Indigenous, that one is still open, I believe, till September 9th. We'll actually look at that in a sec. But the Community Foundations of Canada, the tentative date that I've heard is September 28th. So, hey, feel free to hold me to it. It was supposed to happen sometime in September. It seems they're waiting till the end of September. But when that does open, the window would probably be a couple weeks. So that's why we're doing these info sessions now, to make sure and prepare you ahead of time. So a lot of the questions about your project, your business, and your social enterprise, you want to think them through as soon as possible, be able to ask questions, and then when the application opens, you'd be able to apply within the first week or so. On this website, which I'm going to put into the chat, you'll see they do talk about round 1 and round 2 results. It's good to look through because you want to get an idea of what has been funded in the past. All right, so I put that link into the chat just so you can scroll down a little bit and go to the round 1 results. The round 1 results is better than the round 2 results, only because it actually provided this I'll say spreadsheet of the names of the organizations. In round 2, it was difficult to see like it put in this format. And you'll see if you're looking through with me, there were a lot of nonprofit organizations that got funding and not a lot of for-profit social enterprises. So you want to be mindful that if you're coming in as a for-profit company, you're going up against more established nonprofit companies or nonprofit organizations that either already have a social enterprise or are starting social enterprises. And they had over 1,000 applications in the first cycle, and only about 110 actually got funded. So it's very competitive. You do have to have not just a stellar application, but also they could just run out of space. So all that to say, you cannot win it if you're not in it. So you'll see ACBN, we were funded in the round 1 of the last cycle for our own social enterprise concept. So definitely possible. And I remember us working with at least 5 other businesses that got funding out of, and that's where we want to track to see how well we are doing in our application. So if you're interested in the investment readiness program, it's important to let us know. And there's actually a form that I was going to put into the chat afterwards to fill out and just let us know that you're interested, because we want to see what your journey is like. And the reason that we're doing this is because when we looked at these initial results and we saw that we were working with 20 organizations and 20 businesses and only 5 of them were successful, to me, that success ratio was low. So we actually reached out to the community foundations and said, hey, this is what we're seeing. We're curious to know more about your process. And we were able to write a report for them to look through their entire process and see if it's actually serving the population that the grant is supposed to be supporting. So one thing that we did find is the loan reviewers weren't matching the actual loan recipients. So that's something that they took back. Also, a lot of the organizations weren't Black-led, but they were Black-serving. So that question was actually included into their next round, because if an organization is serving the Black population, they should be representative at their board and executive level. So things like that, we want to be able to advocate on your behalf. And so understanding that you're interested in applying, and we can track your journey and see what barriers do come up. Are you having issues with the flow in the questions? The questions from the previous rounds, you'll notice, are very nonprofit leaning. So the language that they use as a for-profit company, you might get thrown off just by the way that, just by the words that they use, even though you qualify and you know the answer, the way they ask the question throws off a for-profit company. So that's where try not to get stuck and give up. definitely reach out to myself or the team and say, listen, this is where I'm at, and I just need to understand what they're asking so that I can answer the question properly. A big piece would be joining one of the working groups as well. That's going to start, I believe, mid-October. So looking at the application in full and then being able to go through it, I'll say question by question, and you'd be able to ask your own questions if you are stuck. So stay tuned for that, oh my gosh, that working group invitation. But for now, actually, let me see where this takes you. See, this full list of results shows round two. Yeah, I don't think it shows round two. All right. Now, I did want to show you an example of a previous application so that you get an idea of what types of questions to look out for. And I'll give you a bit of insight on some of the questions that kind of threw people off because it's nonprofit leaning. So the initial ones here, this was something that was changed. So you don't have to provide 5 years of financial statements if you haven't been in business for 5 years. If you have been, then they do ask for up to 5 years. Typically, the previous 2 years is fine. Yep, just putting in your registration documents. You will have to upload like the list of your management team and board of directors. So if you don't have that, if you're a sole proprietor, I want to confirm if sole proprietors can apply. You might have to be incorporated, and especially if you're a nonprofit, you definitely have to be incorporated. But I did see sole proprietor as an option the last round, but I did not see any sole proprietors get funding. So if you're a sole proprietor now, you might want to think about incorporating, or this round might not be the best fit as you incorporate and then develop some traction. The next round might be better. So the initial contact info, course standard. For us, we are a nonprofit. And let's see. All right. So if you did apply before, they do ask you to let them know when. Organizational mission, of course, this should be somewhere safe and sound. As I mentioned on our grant writing webinars, using something like Google Keep, where now all of these answers are readily available for you. You'll see our mission and statement, all this stuff is somewhere easily accessible. So if you haven't started saving these answers in somewhere that's easy to grab, that would be your homework. Google Keep is a quick one, but what we do with the grant writing blueprint is actually put it all into a Google Doc. So as you're going through, actually, I will put this into the chat so you can kind of use it as a template. And sorry, did you get the other link? I feel like I might have sent that to people in the waiting room. The other link with the, okay, the Community Foundation one is good. All right. So this link actually takes you to this document. You can use it as a template. The answers, I would say, aren't the greatest, but it gives you an idea, because this was back in 2020. So a lot of things have evolved, but you can use it as somewhat of a guide. And let's see. I was curious to see if they do ask you to pick sustainability goals. So the UN has their sustainable development goals. The previous round, you had to choose 3. This round, probably just the one. All right. So they ask about what social, cultural, environmental problem does your organization solve? So this is where really understanding the social impact that you're having in the community. If you can't answer this question clearly, this is a really heavily weighted question. So definitely take time to work on it and ask for help if needed. pretty straightforward. What goods or services? So actually, this is where even myself got tripped up. So it asks, what goods or services do you deliver? And then the next one is, how do you generate revenue? So what you deliver is more around what do you deliver to the community. So you'll see we're talking about the target audience and what we support them with. How you generate revenue would be the thing that you're selling. So for this, it was the marketing support. We were creating a creative agency that supports businesses with their marketing. So that's where people were putting what they sell into this question, which it actually had to go into this question because this section, a nonprofit would know like, oh, these are the services that we do in the community. A for-profit wouldn't know to put that answer there. So that's something to keep in mind. Hopefully they kind of rework that answer, that question. But beyond that, it asks you questions about previous revenue. It does ask you, how are the profits used? And this is where you want to talk about profits that are coming in, profits that you're making. How does that support the community? And then this, again, was one of the heavier weighted sections. So previously, they kind of lumped all 5 questions into one question. Hopefully, they section it out, but it's really asking, what's the growth, what's the projected growth of the organization? How do you intend to meet this growth? So it's really talking about your cash flow projections, your marketing strategy and execution. How do you plan to make this enterprise sustainable? So the fact that you're running a social enterprise, typically you have additional costs that traditional for-profit companies don't have. So now you'd have to really put together a strategy that allows the social enterprise to be sustainable, and they want to see that answered in that question. Talking about your target market. So this is where business owners would understand this concept, but when you're a nonprofit, typically your target market was the community that you're serving. When you're starting an income generating activity, the target market changes to who are you selling your goods or services to. So that's where you have to separate the nonprofit free work that you do with the income generating things that you're now selling. So that's where I saw a lot of applications get tripped up. So understand this question right here is asking about your target market for who you are selling your products or services to, and then outlining some of your top competitors. Again, typically if you're a nonprofit, you're not really thinking about competitors, but you have to start thinking in that lens because now you are entering, I'll say, the business realm with your social enterprise. So we were answering some of the questions there. We had some of their target market. I actually don't think we put our competitors, so that was something that we missed and had to put in after. When asking about procurement and employee conditions, sustainable practices, this is something that typically we usually don't think about, but if you're getting a grant for 50,000 to 100,000, you need to understand if you're buying from a vendor over a certain threshold, it's called procurement. So you're procuring these goods or services. They want to see, do you have a policy in place that says, hey, over a certain threshold, this is our process. So for example, we put that we have to get a minimum of 3 quotes. 2 of the 4 board members have to sign off on it. It can be as simple as that, or more as that. I mean, if you're a bigger nonprofit, typically you have a flushed out, robust procurement process, but it doesn't have to be too complicated. And then they definitely want to know how you're tracking and measuring, like what do you want to measure, especially around your social purpose, like the impact that you're going to have in the community. What are the things that you want to measure? And then what are the ways, I think that's the next one. Yeah, how would you actually measure those things? Something to keep in mind. You want to be very clear on the metrics that show success. And let's see. And here is another really important question, because as I mentioned, it is step 1 to step 2, which step 2 is a social finance fund. They want to understand, how are you going to use this money now to fine tune your business or your social enterprise? in order to obtain future money through the social finance fund. So it doesn't say social finance fund, but this is what they're talking about. They want to see how you're going to fine tune and get prepared or get investment ready or get ready for investment from the money that they're about to flow. And that is through the social finance fund. So if you're not clear on how it connects, you want to make sure and ask questions because this is what they're asking. They want to know that you're clear on how it connects to bigger investment into your social enterprise. So they're not funding and giving grants to social enterprises that pretty much say, hey, I'm going to start this business. I need this money to get it off the ground. Yes, it's going to support the community, but really it's just going to stay at that level. They want to see that you're preparing to get bigger investments so you can grow the positive community impact that you have. So that was an area that I did see a lot of applications miss. Beyond that, before it asks you for a pretty simple budget. I hope that they actually give a template for this round before we kind of just have to create our own. So just outlining different things that you can spend the money on. And actually, I'll show you the FAQ to give you an exact. So before, I mean, these were all approved. RBL. All right. Let's see. So yeah, I'll jump over to that one. But this was, we used it for business development, support with finishing the business plan, completing our financial modeling, doing the impact measurement and analysis. ACBN, this was in kind that ACBN oversaw it, the marketing and printing costs and legal services. So just an example of some of the costs that we put our funds towards. And let's see. All right. Oh, quick question, Fun French tutoring. Yes, I know the working groups are in the evenings. The info sessions, we should probably do a couple of the evenings. We don't have any plan for the evening yet, but we will get that onto the calendar. So the answer is yes, we will do one of them in the evening. And let's see. So again, this was another question where people got tripped up because it's asking what skill is missing from your organization or your social enterprise right now that you're going to fill with this fund. So you see how these were the areas that we're spending the money on. Oh, where am I missing it? So finishing the business plan or business development, you pretty much want to outline that on your current team, you don't have a specific person that can support you with business development. So you're going to use the money to bring in a consultant to help you with your business development needs. So if it's something about finances, hey, we don't have anybody internal that has the skills to do our financial modeling. We are going to use this money to bring in an expert service provider around our finances to get that financial modeling done. So that's where you want to be really clear on that one. All right. And let's see, promotional plan. These, I want to make sure there's any. Yeah. These ones was more just me answering that question of what was missing, what do we need. Yep, we wanted to bring on expert service providers. Describing who is on the team is really important. Yeah, and this one, when we first did the draft, we had to add more team members because just putting one person isn't smart. So try to build out your team. And yeah, this was just talking about the marketing support. And these were just info that they're collecting about how well do you understand about the investment readiness program and the focuses of your social purpose organization. All right, so time is running. So this section, I wanted to show you the current open investment readiness program that's done through the National Association of Friendship Centers, because the community foundations one will be similar. I don't think they're gonna, because you'll see this one, they had streams. Hold on. So as I mentioned, they are focused on indigenous engagement and regional. I put the right person. Sorry, I moved the wrong person. All right. And let's see, so general eligibility. So yeah, you'll see they're going to be focused more on indigenous, but it's pretty similar where you can be a nonprofit social enterprise or a for-profit, but the eligible expenses is what I wanted to show you. And oh, actually, I want to show you these deadlines. So they've been accepting since August 10th and is closing September 9th, and a decision was going to be made by October 15th. And you'll see that the project itself needs to be done by June 30th of 2023. So this is where you really have to, when this opens, it might be really, it's going to be a fast turnaround to them making a decision, funds flowing. So funds will probably flow before the end of the year because you're only going to have until about May or June of next year to complete, well, maybe June or July. Hopefully they'll give a bit more time. But the eligible expenses is what, actually, I'll put this into the chat that you can check this out as well. All right, so helping with your business plan, helping with financial expertise, similar to, like I mentioned, we used it for financial modeling, getting legal or technical financial help. So that would be like bookkeepers or accountants, doing your impact measurement, completing research and development, your marketing, design, branding, product development. They do mention minor asset purchases and is it incremental HR and staff expenses. So you can put funds towards a person that's internal to your organization to pay to cover their costs. Very important, what it can't be used for. So core operating costs of the organization. So if you already have staff, you can't now get this grant to fully pay one of your staff. It has to be either focused on the project or, I mean, get creative, but technically is not used for core operating. And you can't get real estate or land purchases, COVID-19 type business relief, individually owned enterprise development. That's interesting because I think that lends to the question around us being able to be a sole proprietor and apply. I will get confirmation on that, but I do feel like if you're a sole proprietor, you might not be able to apply. Doing fundraising events and conferences, so you won't be able to use the money that you get for that, and travel that's not related to enterprise business. All that to say, I did put this link into the chat so you can look it over, but this link isn't the main Community Foundations of Canada application. This one is specific to the Indigenous community. So if you're not from the Indigenous community, you wouldn't be able to apply, but a lot of the frequently asked questions are similar. So when the Community Foundations of Canada opens, you'd be pretty far ahead in knowing what to expect, especially understanding what you want to spend the money on. You will have a good idea here. All right. Excellent. So again, that is the presentation. As I always say, we exist to see the community win, and that means helping you as an entrepreneur or executive director grow your organization. I'm excited to work with you. I know the team is also excited. As this ramps up, one, we're going to be doing these info sessions on a continual basis. So by the time it opens, you'll be fully informed, and I would hope already worked on a lot of those questions. But if you do know somebody that isn't here that should get this information, please either reach out to me to get the recording or invite them to the next session so that they can ask questions. But I will pause there so that you can ask your questions. And Mohammed, are you able to check through? I wasn't sure if I saw a couple questions, but if I missed any questions in the chat. But the floor is open if you did want to ask a question.
Hi, Ryan. Jacob here. Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Good. Thank
For sure,
you
yes.
for putting this together. Much appreciated. And we appreciate that. Personally, I know I appreciate that having this info session. Thank you very much. So 2 questions I have. I would say lots of information. I'm trying to digest all of them and narrow down. That's why this your response to this question will help. So the first question is, you said something now, maybe you partly answered that question, your last statement, but still try again to expand better, please. So how can we apply for this grant? When I say how, I meant, is there a website? Is there a social funding network that you recommend? Are you going to send us information on when we need to apply? Is there a platform? So that's what I meant by how can we apply? The second question is, can you help us become a social enterprise? If yes, how do we go through that with you?
Yes. So first question, the application portal isn't open just yet. They did say about September 28th. And it's a portal where you answer pretty much all the questions online. And that would be through the Community Foundations of Canada website. So as soon as that portal is open, we would share it out with everybody that's come to these info sessions or that's on our newsletter to let you know now's the time you can go in and apply. We do the info sessions ahead of time so that you can get access to some of the questions so you can start working on it, I would say in a Google Doc. Then when it opens, you just cut and paste over. The second question, yes. So me personally, I do support development of social enterprises. So if you needed help with that, like conceptual, what type of business, how to really have that positive impact in the community, we can definitely work together, and I could work with you and more on a consultant basis. But this is where I would say it's tricky because I'd want you to get the funding to be able to pay for that type of consulting service. If you just need help with formulating the idea, happy to have that conversation. And I mean, we've talked a couple times, so we can dig deeper into what you would apply with. And then from there to actually develop the social enterprise and grow it, we can work alongside you there as well.
Thank you.
Cool, my pleasure. And any other questions, feel free to unmute. I will check through. And as somebody is putting up their hand, hold on. I would want to, oh, am I muted? One thing I do want to say is if you are a service provider, I talk a lot about positioning ourselves in front of the flow of money. So now there's going to be 100 or so organizations getting this type of grant funding, $50 million flowing out the door that they have to spend with service providers and consultants. If you provide these services, make sure and hey, let us know. You can sign up for something like Calabash where you're put onto a roster. But these are services that these grants, the successful grantees have to spend money. So they should spend it with you if you're able to execute these things. So really understanding that it might not be you applying for the grant itself, but you can also provide your service to those that are getting the grant funding. So just something to keep in mind. Yes, actually, I said Calabash a couple times. Let me pull it up. I remember what the website is, and I'll put it into the chat as well. So as a service provider, Calabash is a cooperative of service providers. So when an organization is looking for like to hire a consultant, and it could be a wide range of consultants, they'd be able to come here and find some of these service providers. You'll see like you can get put onto the list. So I'll put their link in here because they're going to be working closely with ourselves as we're coaching people on how to get the grants. We're going to be looking at Calabash and their vendors to say, hey, somebody needs financial modeling. Is there a vendor here that can do that? Somebody needs business development or business plan, feasibility study. We'd be able to connect them through Calabash. So yes, you're welcome, Susanna. All right. Again, floor is open. I've been told I'm a hard man to get a hold of. So if you do have a question, try not to save it. Ask away, or we try and book some time later. But now is a good time. You got my full undivided attention. All right.
Hey, Ryan, I have a question. It's Paul over here.
Yes, yes.
Would you suggest that if there's a company or someone who's got the idea, but not necessarily some of the things that you need set up yet, would you encourage going through the process to get yourself to a point like answering those questions to get to a point for the next whatever that might be? And I guess the follow-up question is this because I know this is like the money that sets you up for the larger opportunity. So is there going to be another one? Do you foresee that in the near future?
I would foresee it in some form or fashion. Officially, they haven't said that there's going to be a round 3, but there was a round 1, and then there was advocacy to have a round 2. And I know the advocacy right now is to have this permanent, so that social enterprises would always have some sort of grant funding that they could plug into. Until that is confirmed and official, I can't say for sure, but yes, because the social finance fund is such a big pool of money, they need to see viable social enterprises to tap into it. So there has to be a way to groom social enterprises to be ready for step 2. So there will be some form of step 1. What that looks like, I'm not sure. So to answer your question, yes, I would still go through the motions because these questions help you flush out your own social enterprise concept. Then you'd be ready for whatever form of funding exists, at least somewhat ready for the social finance fund or getting prepared for it.
Okay, thanks.
And I did see a question, will the recording be sent out? Yes. So once this renders and is ready, that'll get emailed out to everybody that registered. Another question, does the foundation have a diversity officer on staff? That is a great question. I bet you yes, I don't know, but I feel like a diversity officer is the flavor of the month. And if they don't have one, they're probably in process of having one, but I digress. I do not know 100% for sure. I would assume yes, but I don't know. And question, so if you're a solo founder that has a corporation, you may not be successful since they want to see a team. I would say it would reduce your probability of success, because a solo person versus an application with a team, they're going to favor a team that will be able to execute what they're applying for. A solo person on a team does not look good. It is possible that it might get through, but out of all the ones that I saw in round 1 and round 2, it was less than 10% were a solo applicant that was the entire team. They had to at least have like a co-founder or a team working with them on the project. So I would not apply as just a solo. I mean, you can, but it's low probability. And I'll get to that second one after. Susanna, did you want to go ahead?
Oh, yes. Thank you for offering this session. It's been ultra informative. I'm a grant writer who does diversity workforce development. I've been doing it before it became really trendy. That's why I'm
Yes.
asking. This may not be something to think about, but thank you for mentioning the Calabash, because I think a lot of the work that we're doing right now within our Afro-Caribbean communities and our African diaspora communities, we need to learn about that partnering. And so I'm wondering if the Afro-Caribbean Business Network has plans to apply for a grant, and you and I can talk offline about that concept, because I think it would be great. Obviously, the Calabash is a online tool to partner people, but there might be people in this room virtually that could partner with each other, depending on what our expertises are. So I just want to just share that with you, and we can have a sidebar conversation afterwards or whatever.
And I would say 100% yes. As you know, I wasn't sure if you're asking if we're just applying for grants in general. I think there's at least 21 grants that are outstanding in the ecosystem that ACB. I apply for everything that I find until they tell me that I don't qualify. So yes, and that collaboration piece is so important. Susanna, you're getting asked for your contact info, so please put that into the chat. And yeah, in the room, and that's really why at the beginning we ask people to mention what they do, because if somebody does what you need, you are in the space to get the money to pay that person. So definitely make those connections. We are trying to formalize how to make those connections more purposeful. So Calabash, they do masterminds. We do the working groups. We also just have ongoing networking events, but we want to actually get purposeful with making those connections. So yes. And that's where Tim is mentioning we do a Black Ecosystem Study Group each Tuesday evening. So actually I can put, and it is virtual, it's going to be virtual for the winter, but studygroup.acbncanada.com, and join us to flush out those relationships and really build on it. So yes, that is important, and we're actively working on that. Excellent. And Tamisha is put in that they're working on a membership program. So if you check out this website, empowerher101.com, they're another way to really connect and start to build out those relationships. All right. I do see we're over 2, and I think I'm supposed to be somewhere at 2 o'clock, so I have to go apologize to someone. But again, thank you everyone for being present in the chat, and we will email it as well. There is a form. Yeah, we're going to email you a form to get your interest in this grant. So if you're interested, please fill out the form, let us know, because we want to track your journey so that at the end of it, we can kind of compile it and see, is there a trend with how the Black community is being treated, so that we can advocate on your behalf. So look out for that link. I will send that. Actually, did I finish it, or is it? Yes, application tracker. So let me put this into the chat so that you have it. Where'd it go? Thank you. All right, so before you run, as we're closing out, yes, if you could fill out this form, we would want to advocate on your behalf. We want to see if these info sessions are valuable, if these working groups are valuable, if it actually gets your application in and it's strong. And we want to see as many of you get money as possible. So stay tuned. If anything, I'll see you in a couple weeks, or we shall talk in between. And yes, we'll get the slide presentation emailed with it, so that way all the links are in there. All right. Our pleasure. Our pleasure. Thanks, Tamisha. Yes, Dion. Good seeing everyone. All right. Have a good rest of the evening, and we shall talk soon.